Thanks everyone for joining us. This is our Ask Me Anything for our AI Accountability Fellowship for 2026. If you haven't met me before, my name is Joanna Gao, and I'm the AI editor here at the Pulitzer Center, where I oversee the AI Accountability Network. I've got a couple of people with me today. I've got my engagement counterpart, Maria Karienova. She is calling in from Indonesia. We also have one of our current AI fellows from this year, Sierra Yap from Malaysia. And also I've got one of my colleagues, Catherine, who's going to be helping us with some Zoom tech support. So we're really excited to have you all with us today and excited to get started. Just a couple of announcements first, just a little bit of logistics. We have planned for this webinar to be 45 minutes long. But we want to make sure we cover as much ground as possible. So if we have a lot of questions from you all, we're happy to stay just a couple of minutes longer as well, in case there are more questions that we can't get to in the 45 minutes. We will be recording this webinar, so we'll be posting this on our website for people who aren't able to see it right away. Just a couple of other things. We have a chat which will be able to go straight to us. But if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box in Zoom. And you should, I believe, also be able to upvote questions if there are ones that also resonate with you, and that will also help us curate which questions we can get to at the end of the webinar today. If you have any technical issues or if there's anything wrong with something that we're doing, please put that into the chat so we can help remedy that as soon as we can. Last but not least, our call for proposals for this year's fellowship is open, and we are accepting applications until July 12th, 2026. So you can get a link to apply at the QR code on your screen. Also, my colleague Catherine will be dropping the link for our open call into the chat, hopefully very shortly. So today we're going to have a pretty basic agenda. We're going to try to demystify this application process, try to clarify some questions you might have about the fellowship. We'll also share some tips for applying. We'll talk a little bit about the timing, what the fellowship provides, and what to expect from the experience. And for some of you, if you've seen the open call already, you will see that for the first time this year, we're also formally integrating an engagement and impact aspect into the fellowship. So this is why my colleague Maria is here to talk more about what we're looking for and especially what we mean by engagement and impact. And then really the highlight of the day is really getting to hear from one of our current fellows, Sierra Yap, who's calling in from Malaysia. She's going to be talking a little bit about how she prepared her application last year, share some tips, and then we will be taking questions from all of you. So again, if you've got questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box as soon as you have them, and then we will go through them closer to the end of today's session. So just a little bit about the basics of our fellowship. These are things that you may have already seen on our website. But this is a 10-month part-time and remote fellowship, which means that you're able to do this from anywhere in the world. It's part-time, so most of our fellows we expect will have other work alongside this. Usually we recommend that fellows try to get at least 2 days a week to work on their fellowship project throughout the year. And mostly it's because we've noticed that people have less time than that. It's actually quite frustrating for them as well. So 10 months sounds both short and long. So it's something to think about, especially when you're considering the scope of your proposal. We're aiming to start at the end of September this year, which means that we will be running through the end of July of 2027. And we really look at a really large scope of what we mean by AI. So we're focusing on the people, the governments, the companies, and we're also looking at the entire AI supply chain, looking at how the data is generated, how it's labeled, what's the physical infrastructure that has been put up to try to cater to this version of AI. How are the models put together? And also how are governments, private companies, schools, anyone else applying AI within your communities? The fellowship is open to both staff and freelance journalists. We usually have about half and half in each of our fellowship classes. And crucially, we really are looking for people who can really benefit and also add to that cohort community. So we're really looking for team players who are really generous with their knowledge and can really work collaboratively. We did have some questions in our registration form when you were signing up for today's session about asking about whether people who weren't working journalists could apply. This is a fellowship meant for working journalists who have a track record of doing in-depth journalism. So if that's not you or if that's not your background, it might be much more difficult to become a fellow because it's quite a competitive process. We did also have some questions on whether we were targeting any particular ages or any particular career stages. And the answer is we are not. We're looking for people who have a track record of doing in-depth human-centered work, who are really open to learning, and that can apply to any of you at any age or at any career stage. And as I said earlier, it's a remote fellowship, so you can be based anywhere and you can apply. More on this. So this year we are providing up to $20,000 for the reporting project and up to $5,000 for engagement expenses. So for reporting budgets, that can include anything from records requests, travel expenses, data analysis, really any other costs that you need to be able to do the ambitious reporting project that you want to do. And for engagement expenses, these are just some examples of what that could look like. It could look like venue rentals, event refreshments, printing costs. It could look like flyers, social media ads. These are just some of the examples that might be expenses that would work under engagement expenses. And then for freelancers, we do also allow for 1/3 of your total budget to go towards your own stipend. We generally will assume that for staff reporters that their newsrooms are able to cover their own time while they're working on the fellowship. And then things that we're able to give to people as part of the fellowship, people will get opportunities for mentorship. We do monthly trainings. We have constant data and research support. They'll have access to a community of other journalists, especially with this being our 5th cohort. And there will also be opportunities for them to talk more about their project after the fellowship through engagement activities that we help organize as well. So these are the requirements. These are things that we expect from our fellows. We expect our fellows to publish their investigation. We want to make sure that all the training that you're getting during the fellowship will mean that you're able to publish a really impactful story at the end, and that you're able to get it to the audience who should be able to see it. We will have a mandatory, usually 90-minute to 2-hour meeting every month. We'll be holding it in English. We expect our fellows to engage with each other. We have a dedicated virtual platform where fellows will upload work, and also we use Signal groups, so we generally expect our fellows to be engaged with that process between meetings. We also want to be able to build up a really good resource around AI accountability reporting. So we do expect our fellows to also write up their reporting methodology as well at the end. And then also present those published stories to our AI community in some format. One of the things that I really love about our fellowship is really the community aspect. We do aim to get our fellows together in person once a year during the fellowship. Unfortunately, this year that get together hasn't happened yet. We were meant to take our fellows to RightsCon in Lusaka, Zambia. And unfortunately, if you haven't heard already, it was canceled at a very, very late stage. So we're actually in the process of arranging a new meetup now. We're hoping to bring our current cohort of fellows and possibly our new group of fellows to MozFest next year as one big get together. So that's what we're hoping. But because we weren't able to, we don't have photos from this year because it hasn't happened yet, but these are the photos from the previous year where our fellows were able to present their work at the ZEG Storytelling Festival in Tbilisi, Georgia. And during that time, they also planned for a couple of investigations to work on after the fellowship. So it's been really great to see how that community is able to be built during the fellowship and also continue even afterwards. So just a couple of things that you want to make sure you have before applying, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk to Sierra. But you want to do a bit of pre-reporting ahead of time so that you can make sure that you're scoping and also explaining your reporting methodology well in your application. So you want to have that reporting plan being guided from the pre-reporting that you do. We're also asking for an engagement plan because we want to understand, and actually we'll talk to Maria a little bit more about what that looks like, but we want to make sure that you understand who your audience is and how you're going to reach them. It's really important to have support from an outlet. Going back to what we expect from our fellows, we do expect that the stories are published during the fellowship. So we want to make sure that you have an outlet that will be there for you during the reporting process, support you through with legal, with anything legal related, editing, graphics, any other support you would need, and also support you through to publication. And we will be asking people for 3 professional references. So if you're looking for some inspiration, there are some upcoming free trainings that we're offering. So if you're kind of coming today and you're going, not really sure like what a good idea might look like, or maybe you're just looking for just more tools in your tool belt when you're working on your application, we do have some trainings coming up. There's one next week, which is our Intro to AI Reporting training, which is going to be in English with French interpretation. And also for those of you who are interested in reporting on data centers, which is part of that infrastructure piece of the AI supply chain, we do also have a reporting on data centers training on the 23rd of June as well. You can register on the QR code. And I think if Catherine's there, maybe she can drop a link to those events as well. If you missed both of these, we're actually also running a training with GIJN on June 30th. So we'll drop a link there as well, or you can look that up on the GIJN website. I think some parts of the slide didn't load, but what this slide should have, it should be showing some of the stories that we've supported in the past. Let me see if I can reload it and see if it will come back. It is not coming back. Okay, well, I will try to riff here anyway. Within our Spotlight Series trainings, if you haven't been to one yet, we talk about different ways of approaching AI stories. We look at different parts of the AI supply chain, as I mentioned, looking at how data goes into creating AI models, how infrastructure is needed to be able to crunch all that data. And then we look at the models themselves and we look at how they're applied. I'm going to see if Catherine can drop a link just to our list of stories on the Pulitzer Center website, because on that website, you'll be able to see the kinds of stories that we've supported before from our former fellows. And for anyone who signed up here, we'll also follow up with a list of links so that you can check out those stories as well, plus the methodologies that they've created. So if you're looking for inspiration, you can also look at those methodologies. As I mentioned, we do require all of our fellows to write up their methodology, which means that at this point, we've got a couple of dozen pretty detailed methodologies on how to do the work that they've done during the fellowship. So if there's something that resonates with you, I would definitely check that out. If you look at the website on the screen, which Catherine can stick in the chat as well, you can see probably a couple dozen there. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, one of the relatively new things we're doing this year is formally integrating an engagement and impact aspect within the fellowship. It's been an optional add-on to the fellowship in previous years, but we've really realized how important having this really clear understanding of who your audience is and what impact you want to make from the very beginning is. And that's because we found that even just understanding that really improves just the reporting process itself. So in the past, it was an optional part of the program. A majority of our fellows last year opted into this add-on program, including Sierra, which we can talk a little bit more about. But this year, we're just integrating it fully into our training, funding, mentorship, planning throughout the whole fellowship for all of our fellows. So because it's relatively new and it's no longer just an opt-in process add-on, I've asked Maria, who is my engagement counterpart, who's going to help explain what we mean by engagement and impact. So I'm going to turn it over to Maria.
Thank you so much, Joanna, and hello, everyone. It's so good to be here to be able to see like there's so many of you who are joining us and curious about the fellowship. As Joanna mentioned, the engagement component for this fellowship would be the first one that we integrated from the beginning, and we hope that you already include that in the proposal. So what do we mean when we say engagement? As you can see in the slides, the first thing that we want to highlight is that it's a process instead of an outcome. We know that we already there are funding allocated specifically into this, but we don't want you to go into like, okay, how do we spend it? But thinking more on the process of who are the audience, who are the key strategic audience that you want to reach out to. So these are some of the sessions that we will have in the beginning of the fellowship, looking at what the past work looks like. And after defining the audience that are important for you, we also want to refine your engagement strategy. Maybe you already have some ideas on how to reach out to them. And then we need to like further understanding like how does this certain group profile are consuming their informations, whether or not your piece would need to have like a multiple format, or do we need to like completely thinking of the other spaces that we want. I think Joanna also mentions the fact that we want to have our fellows to attend international conferences, and these are also the avenues where we try to maximize our engagement with a wider audience. And specifically, like it can be like researchers, civil society, or university partners, etc. And the last one, in terms of refining the engagement strategy, the process would also include thinking of how do we increase the impact with the audience. It means that how do we see the readers or the group that we're working with as a partner. So one of the examples is in our past fellows, we have like one journalist who are working on a data centers project, and one of the sources was a researcher in that subject. And after the publications, like 3, 4 months after the publications, they were thinking to work with the researchers again on creating like a community discussions or meet up to discuss about the project, to increase the awareness on the impact of data centers in their neighborhoods. And I think that's like one of good examples of how the resource, initially she was a resource person, but then eventually she take up the project even after the publications, and creating another meetup sessions with the community. So that's just like one quick examples of, partnership, what partnership can look like. And lastly, thinking about the outcome. And this is like the desirable shift that you wanted to see within this audience. Are there anything that, behavioral or even knowledge and awareness? These are how we finally measure on our engagement or impact activities. But one other notes that I would like to highlight is that there's no impact that is too small. So it can be as small as, as perhaps like not small, but it can be, discussions within like a peer groups, or it can be like just a community meetup. It doesn't have to be like a really a long-term goal like policy change and whatnot. I understand that it can be desirable, but we also need to think on the timeline of the fellowship, given it's only 10 months, and see like what are the concrete things that we can do within the fellowship 10 years. So yeah, I think that should be all. I believe next would be Sierra. Jana, is that correct? Oh, you're muted, Joanna.
Sorry about that. I feel like I should have figured this one out like this many years of the pandemic. But I just got one more slide. But I really love the fact that, Maria, that you mentioned that it's a lot of this is really about like almost like a mindset or like a process change rather than a specific output that we're looking for. So I think it's really that process that we're in, like that kind of way of thinking that we're looking for in your plan. Before I turn it over to Sierra, though, which really is the highlight of today's conversation, I just want to go through just a couple of tips and things that we've learned from running this fellowship from the last couple of years. So the first thing, I mean, I'm hoping that this has come through already, but AI reporting is for every beat. I think a lot of people think it might be kind of niche or technical, but actually AI is something, especially if you think of AI as like the much broader version of AI. If you're thinking about it, if you kind of see it as like an automation, it's being used in every part of society, and so we're really looking at how you can see AI from different lenses. And the second thing is to really highlight human voices. At the end of the day, it is a tech story, but also these are incredibly human stories. So the things that we really encourage all of our fellows to focus on is what is the human impact that's happening right now, and how can we highlight those voices within your stories. The third, and I'm actually seeing a couple of questions about this later, so we'll probably get into this in more detail in a bit, is really interdisciplinary work and collaboration is key. Especially these stories, they have lots of different ways of investigating them. And because of that, it's really great to have collaborators with lots of different skills. So really think about, are there partners that you can bring into your project and learn from, especially from other disciplines. The fourth one is sometimes we will get applications that heavily rely on records requests. And as you probably all know already, a lot of them will take a long time and sometimes are not very reliable in terms of knowing when you will get them back. So if your reporting methodology is heavily dependent on records requests, file them as soon as possible. And also make sure that you do have a plan B. I mean, have a plan B generally, but especially if your story is reliant on records requests, be able to tell us what your plan B is if those records requests don't come back in a timely fashion or don't match what you're hoping to get back. The next one is to make sure you have support of your editor and outlet throughout the process. Just from our own experience, our fellows who didn't have the strongest editor or outlet support from the beginning really struggled as they got further into the fellowship. And the fellows who have been most successful through the fellowship and also had the most fun during the fellowship were the ones who really had real partners within the newsrooms that they were working with, whether they were a staff reporter or a freelance reporter. So really, especially when you're thinking about who you want to work with for the next 10 months, Rick, really think about who could give you that kind of support. The next one is to also get legal support early, especially depending on the kinds of stories that you're working on. You want to make sure you get that as early as possible when you're still conceiving that idea. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And also the last one, I think I alluded to this earlier, 10 months is not actually that long. So really think about what is really doable when you're working on your reporting plan. But with that, I'm going to be mostly quiet. I'm going to turn things over to our fellow, Sierra, who is joining us from Malaysia. She is a reporter for Malaysia Kini, and she's been doing incredible reporting on child exploitation networks on Malaysian social media. Her story is coming out in the next couple of weeks, but today you'll get a small sneak peek into her story and her reporting process. So I'm going to turn it over to her first. I guess Sierra, can you just tell us a little bit about your story because it hasn't come out yet, so people won't have had a chance to read it yet, and how or where did you find that story?
Okay. Hi, everyone. So my project is examines the growing threats of child sexual abuse material CSAM in the digital age, particularly how technologies, social media platform, and AI tools are changing the way exploitation occurs online. So to make the issue more accessible, we structure and break it down into 5 stories. The first story is about the Telegram hidden economy because I personally want to understand how CSAM networks operate and monetize. And the second story is more like a social media research about TikTok. So TikTok, they have a great child safety promise. The policies looks good, but we are trying to examine whether the platform policy align with what users actually encounter. And the third story is more human-centric. We want to understand the real-world harm of AI abuse. So we explore the impact of deepfakes or AI-generated CSAM materials on young people. And the last 2 stories is more on identify the enforcement and legal gaps and the regulatory challenges. So back to the second question, how did I find my story? It began with quite something ordinary. I spent too much time on social media, so I kept encountering like harmful, disturbing, questionable content online. So I noticed that there might be something wrong online or on some end-to-end encrypted platform. And more recently, Malaysia was shaken by a high-profile case involving AI-generated deepfakes circulating within a school community. It's a high school, it's a private school. So the perpetrator was only 16 years old and he generated AI deepfakes and sold it online. And what struck me the most was not only the harm caused to the victims, but also how rapidly this technology had become accessible to young people themselves so that they can simply generate and duplicate it and sell it online, trade it online. So I don't believe that this is an original idea from a teen to create AI news. So it might have some connections or influence from the online world. That's why I pitched the story to Pulitzer Center. Yeah.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about how you decided? I mean, talking a little think about pre-reporting and what you did before applying. Can you tell us a little bit about how you decided, like when you had enough to apply?
About the pre-reporting, I took few days to gather screenshot evidence, collect some evidence by OSINTs, and then I wrote a brief analysis. If I'm not mistaken, the pre-reporting is about 6 page, and the first and second page is about the evidence that I collected. And not long, maybe one page is about the brief analysis on the Malaysia legal loopholes and also some gaps that I think is problematic. And I also asked a question is why it is so difficult for a small country like Malaysia to regulate big tech. And there is a paradox that made the story compelling is if I'm not mistaken, Malaysia has one of the highest social media penetration rates in the world, which means most of us we have at least one social media account. We are not a market. We are not invisible to this platform, but yet our regulatory framework at that time remained kind of weak and also fragmented and often toothless sometimes. Yeah. So in my application, I wrote the problem statement, the hypothesis, the methodologies and challenges, and what I can do by myself as a journalist with my newsroom and the lawyer, because this topic is kind of sensitive and illegal. So I need support from the legal aspect. And I also wrote it down what support that I needed from Pulitzer Center. For example, I request specialized training and mentorship focusing on digital security and operational safety, because I have no knowledge on that. And uh, Malaysia Kini newsroom, most of the senior here, they are lack of experience investigating social media or AI at that time. So we are also like kind of lack of knowledge on digital gender-based violence. So I seek the mentorship helps and also some trainings. Yeah, I think that's what makes my application kind of like I feel enough. I need to convince myself that I have enough evidence to prove that the problem is exists. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about what you're saying is that you talked a little bit about your specific context as well, and I really like that you also identified ways that we could also help with your fellowship project. 'Cause I think sometimes, like to us, like what that shows us is that you've really looked at the kinds of skills and like where you feel comfortable and like where what you can do on your own, but also like where you could have other people come alongside you, like either mentors or data and research specialists or digital security specialists, as you say. And I think like that was a really good indication to us that you had really thought through like what I guess you need in reality to do this project that you were proposing. I guess can I ask you a little bit about what your experience has been in the fellowship so far?
Oh, my experience. I always told my friends and colleagues it's a steep learning curve. It's so challenging. It's challenging in the sense of there is so many things that I need to understand in a very limited time frame. So I have to do the research, I have to read some papers, and also I need to uh I need to understand this is the sensitivity of reporting crime. This is my very first time on reporting something illegal. So yeah, I think one of the biggest experience and my bring home value is about the legal opinion from the Malaysian kini lawyer, because Police Centers also request legal opinion from our editorials and lawyers. So as at that time, then I learned Malaysian law actually is not friendly towards journalists. So we have no legal immunity when conducting investigative reporting, and some law enforcement agency even target journalists. So particularly those from Malaysia Kini. So when we talk to a lawyer seek for advice, it's kind of like doing a risk assessment. So we need to understand the risk and also need to manage and mitigate the risk. Yeah, that is one of the most valuable aspect. And the other one is about the opportunity to learn from people around the world because uh Pulitzer offers mentorship. So it's kind of like I'm able to reach out to people or important international organization to get some to obtain some data and reports. Because in contrast, some of our requests to the local agency until now is still awaiting responses, but some international organization they are very helpful. They are happy to help journalists to complete their investigative reports. So that kind of network is something that I have never thought before I apply for this fellowship. Yeah.
And then one of the things that I love hearing about whenever we have our one-to-ones is hearing about some of the ways that you've been thinking about engagement and impact within your project. I'm wondering if you can tell us just a little bit about how you identified who your target audience was, and then some of the events that you're actually going to be working on soon, and how you plan on using that information to feed back into your reporting.
Mhm. About the impact initiative, I learned that most of the funder they don't want the project or the story die on the website. So when I pitched to Pulitzer Center, I mean I dream about that time is still dreaming. I dream about I plan about the outreach program that we have to do. So because this story is about child sexual abuse and it's not a comfortable story, then we identify that. But other than policymakers or academics or people who care about governance and politics, we feel like this is something we want to bring it to campus and talk to the youngsters, the youth, the teenagers, or even children. So along the way, we understand that the children who are most at risk, they are not reading Malaysia Kini, of course. So the parent might not be able to afford a subscription as well. Even sometimes teacher and his master might be don't always run in our readership either. So we plan going into campus and starting some workshop with university students to start the conversation because the young people they spend most of the time online, so they might be the one who uh might be a victim, but they might be also the one to be a game changer because they might be the first I mean the frontliner to notice something suspicious online. Yeah. So we identify that our target audience is actually parents and children or teenagers. And the second would be the policymakers. So along the way, I didn't plan it initially, but for example, UNICEF or some local CSO, they noticed that, oh, finally someone is working on CSAM. So they reach out and ask, do you need any resources? Do you need to interview someone? We can facilitate, we can help. So I think along the way, because we start doing something, when you need help, there might be someone else that able to uh, I mean, give some inputs and share some experience, even put a on record interview. Yeah, that will be very helpful.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing about how those events go and how you're able to reach people. Because I love that you're able to be so specific about also the groups that you want to reach with each of the things that you are working on. And you're absolutely right. We definitely don't want your stories to die on the table. So we want to make sure that the stories that you're working on, especially because they really are still relevant for such a long time. We want to make sure that they're reaching the people that need to see it. So and then I guess before we go to Q&A with everybody else, again, just a reminder for everyone, if you've got questions or if you're going through the Q&A box, please upvote the questions that you want us to answer because that will also help us curate which ones we can get to in this call. The last question for Sier, for you is there any advice that you'd give people who are applying or thinking about applying?
Uh, think of it as a project, a 10-month project, but not a single piece of story idea. So the application is kind of like a project plan that you want to create impact because as I said just now, it's like publishing sometimes is like the beginning of the impact because you need some tools to start the conversation. So it's not the end of reporting, which means in another way, your application is to show what you have done, but not you plan to do.
Yeah, it's also I love what you've said there. It's good. It's good to like understand like what is actually feasible and doable with what you've done, and also to show like what you've done before. Um, Great, awesome. Let me take a look at some of these questions. I think we've answered a couple of them in the Q&A already. So if there's a question in there that has already been there, you can take a look at that in the answer tab. But let me go through them now. Again, please upvote questions you want us to go over, and we will try to do that in order. The top one right now is a question about the freelance stipend. Does this mean that only 1/3 of the 20,000 can be used to pay for our time? As a freelancer, my time is my biggest expense. I think there's another question that's similar to this, which is from Selena about the 25,000 divided by 3. Yes, so our budgets are looking at 1/3 of the total budget. So it's 1/3 of the 25,000 can go to pay a freelance stipend. And part of that is that we want to make sure that you are really using the budget towards the reporting process. But we also do have some flexibility built into that budget. So, for example, we don't ask for receipts for your reporting. So we do ask for people to budget smartly for what they're going to be working on, and also think about what might be realistic within the other projects that you have to have on at the same time. But we also do try to build in a little bit of flexibility into that. And we generally just trust that people will be using their budgets towards the project. So hopefully that is a useful answer for you. If you've got other ones, please add again. Here's one from Neeraj who asks about interdisciplinary teams. So if there's a project team with documentary filmmaker, with a technologist, does the fellowship encourage such interdisciplinary collaborations, and how are those roles structured? Absolutely. I think there might have been a slide. I think you asked the question before we got to it, which is around interdisciplinary collaborations. We very, very much try to encourage that. We have a number of fellows this year who are working with academics or content creators, either on the reporting side or on the engagement side, because we really believe that interdisciplinary collaborations are really, really key for work like this. So in terms of how are those roles typically structured, I will say that there isn't necessarily one typical way this could happen. So we do generally leave it to the applicants to try to work out and structure how it would work. What I will say is on our side, we will always ask, what kind of roles have you all decided will be? We want to make sure that it's not a partnership that will fall apart halfway through the fellowship. We want to make sure there are some really clear understandings of what each person will be contributing, and also what that looks like, not just throughout the reporting process, but also what happens after you publish. What does crediting look like? Who does the interviews afterwards? There's a bunch of things that we want to make sure that you've had conversations about before the fellowship begins, because we want to make sure that that it's going to be a really flourishing partnership. Let's see, is this a bit more of this? Can technologies participate as co-applicants or core team members? Yes, they can. So what I will say is we generally, if you can work in a team, we generally will ask for one person who's the lead person to be the fellow. We have in the past had a couple of duos before. So usually we would probably cap it at 2 people within a team who could kind of be the leads of that team. But I would say that those 2 people have to be able to have quite distinct roles and be able to work together. And they would generally be sharing the same budget. So they would both be able to be fellows, but they would probably be sharing the same $25,000 budget. So in the cases where we've done this before, we had one where we had a kind of print, a written medium reporter and a photojournalist. So we've had a pairing of that before. And we've also had a pairing where it was a little bit more of like traditional reporting skills paired with someone with more data skills. So those are some of the pairings that we've had before. I'm sure there's other ones that we haven't had before. So, but I would say that we generally wouldn't have more than 2 people on a team to be fellows. Let's see, I'm gonna refresh and see what other upvotes we've got. Okay, so 2 questions. Video first outlet publishing investigations in Arabic. How does the impact plan and methodology sharing work when the project's audience doesn't read or speak English? Are there examples from previous cohorts of non-English video projects we can learn from? We actually have tons of non-English video projects. I think Sierra, you're working on one. Sierra, do you want to talk a little bit about what the things you're going to be producing are?
Okay, my main product are still an interactive page, a long form interactive page. It will be translated into in total is 3 languages. So at the same time, because we want to amplify the impact and want to reach more people, so we decided to do videos. So usually, Malaysia Kini, once we have a special report, then we will also translate it into either English or Malay or Chinese. So I think there is no issue for you to do something non-English because my native is Chinese, is Mandarin, so I write in Mandarin and then I share it with my colleagues. So someone need to be the translator, or even you can, if able to do so, you can hire a translator, a professional translator to help you to translate into other languages. I think that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, there is absolutely no requirement that the outputs of your work are in English. And actually, I think for us, it'd be kind of absurd to try to require that because we really care about who your audience is. So unless if your audience is English speaking, you should definitely not force an English output at the end of your project. A number of our projects are solely in the languages where the reporter primarily works in. The second part of this question is how much weight does pre-reporting evidence carry in selection? For example, if an applicant has already documented original findings that no outlet has published. I would say the pre-reporting is really important primarily to be able to make sure that your project is realistic and doable within the time frame. So I think for us, we wouldn't want so much pre-reporting that the project's already done. So, as you say, that if you already have original findings, we would want to know how within the fellowship do you want to go beyond the findings that you already have. But you do want to have enough pre-reporting to understand like what is the scope of the problem, what are some of the sources that you can speak that you can go to, what are the different methodologies you might apply within your fellowship. And I would just go back to what Sierra said earlier about what she did when she was doing her pre-reporting as well. Let's see. For previous work samples, does the participant need to be the sole author, or are stories with multiple authors also acceptable? And would op-ed pieces be considered valid work samples? So the participant doesn't have to be the sole author for stories. I mean, we love it when there are reporters who work in teams and can work with other people. I would say that if all of your samples are co-authored, what we'd probably want to see is understanding what your role within those stories was. So if you're able to kind of add a little bit of a note to explain what your role in those stories was, that would be really helpful. And then would op-ed pieces be considered valid work samples? I would say I wouldn't want to have all of your work samples be op-ed pieces because what we really want to see are examples of really in-depth investigations. Often op-eds might not have that same aspect, but if you have an op-ed piece that is, please do include that. So they would be valid, but I would suggest doing more than just op-ed pieces for your application. Let's see, what are the requirements regarding the publication we get commitment from? For example, what if we have a self-published Substack or run our own outlet? Okay, this is a really good question. So I would say if you run your own outlet, so we've had a couple of fellows who have done that. We have one of our fellows this year, Miguel, who runs Amenaza Roboto, who runs his own outlet. Last year, we had a fellow, Fabiola Torres, who also runs her own outlet. And I think what we would want to see there is we would want to understand the roles of the people within your outlet. Would you have another editor who can support your work? Or just somebody else who can support your work while you're a fellow. So I think that's probably the main question there. Self-published Substack, probably the same questions. A couple things that I would really think about when you're considering this is thinking about who is your audience. Again, like we really care about who your intended audience is. And we also want to think about reach. So sometimes we will have people with their own outlets who will then partner with people that might have more regional reach or a slightly different audience. So those are things that you might want to think about when you're considering the publication. So think about the support that you'll get, but also think about the audience and reach of that outlet. Okay, let me refresh again. Okay. Are you looking for investigative stories like ProPublica with the goal of identifying wrongdoing and correcting it? How open are you to a policy debate on the future of an academic institution where AI adoption may conflict with traditional teaching and research missions? Let's see. I mean, I would say that I think it's hard to try to define what an investigative story like ProPublica looks like, but I would say that we are looking for accountability stories. So it's really good to be really clear about who you are holding accountable in the story. We do really want to see nuanced views. So we want to see that you're not coming in with like a with any kind of prejudgment of what you're hoping to get at the end of your reporting. Um, how open are you to a policy debate on the future of an academic institution where AI adoption may conflict? So I would say with these, like I think what we're most concerned about is making sure that we understand what the human impact right now looks like. So I think when we talk about policy debate, I think I would probably have questions around how much is it grounded in what's happening now and the effects on society right now versus things that might be hypothetical or more predictive. So that would probably be the thing that I would think about. Again, Maria or Sierra, if there are questions that you want to answer here also, please jump in.
Yeah, maybe like quickly around that. I think like the investigation itself can focus more on the human centered, like on the human impact of it all. And then later on in the engagement, we're looking at the policy implications. I think that would make sense for now. But if it's going to be like really focusing on scrutinizing policy, and yeah, it can also be like one of the focus of the investigations. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, Joanna.
Yep, nope, that all sounds good. Okay. We have a question. Are there any particular areas of the AI supply chain or deployment you would rather we avoid? I don't think so. I mean, I think maybe for each person personally, I would pick something that you're personally excited about. So if you're picking a project because you think it will sound good, but you're not that excited about it, usually we can tell. I mean, I think like with Sierra, like one of the things that stood out to us about her application is that it was clearly a topic that meant a lot to her, that she really wanted to spend time working on it. So I would say there's no particular thing that we would want you to avoid, but we would probably want you to avoid doing an application that you're not going to be excited about for 10 months. Because I said 10 months is like not a long time, but it also still is 10 months. So you want to work on something that you are excited about working on. So that's probably my answer to that. Can a previous investigation form the basis of your pre-reporting, as in using this fellowship to further that investigation? Yes, absolutely. That can certainly be the basis of your pre-reporting. We would definitely want to know how you plan to go take that reporting further. So we would want to see not just like continuing reporting on something you've done, but something that is a substantial kind of increase over what you've done previously. Okay,
Joanna, I think
yeah.
there is a questions around stipend for collaborators. There are two questions about it.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
just going from the
Sorry.
top. Yeah, again, if there are questions that are not making it, please upvote stuff so I can see them. But yes, these questions about budgets for stipends for collaborators. Yes, that can be a budget on top of your own stipend. So if you have other like contractors that you need to bring on to help you with something, that can be on top of the stipend that you have for your own reporting time, I mean. Yeah, please surface other stuff that hasn't made it to the top yet. Okay, here's a question from Bangladesh. Says Bangladesh is not one of the countries that are applying AI in everyday life. Is there any possibility that proposal from based on this country would be considered? We are considering proposals from everywhere. And I would say that if you don't feel like AI is being applied in your everyday life in your area or in your region, I would also think a little bit more expansively about what AI looks like. And I know one of our other AI editor, Carolyn Logan, she's from the Philippines. She did one of these AMAs 2 years ago. And one of the things that she said that was helpful for her and has been helpful to me is really to, when you're thinking about AI, also think of the word automation. So think about the parts of your life that might be automated. And I think if you think of it in a little bit of a broader lens, you will actually start seeing the much more large, spectrum of AI in your lives than you expect. So that would be my first thought about that. The second one is, would you consider a proposal rooted in research rather than investigating any specific AI implications, but resulting in data-driven long-form story? I would say it wouldn't be as strong of a story if you don't have any specific. I mean, I would say one generally like the more specificity, the better. But I would also say we really want stories that are really grounded in human stories. So we want to know what's happening in societies right now. I know a lot of research is a little bit more hypothetical or a little bit more predictive, and we really want to look at the like what's happening in your societies already. So I would say that it would probably not be as strong of an application if it's primarily rooted in research and not in probably some on the ground reporting. Okay, hold on. We've got another one. Okay, so staff reporter, our platform has in-house engagement community related staff. Can a community engagement colleague participate in the related training during the fellowship? Do we need to pair as a team to apply? If I wish, he or she can join some of the trainings. That's a really good question. So for our trainings, we actually will break like anybody who's got team members can come to the trainings. We will usually keep the fellowship meetings just to the fellows, just because sometimes we want to make sure that sometimes like a smaller group is just a little bit easier for people to get to know each other. But for the trainings, we do allow team members to also join. So you wouldn't need to apply together for that person to be able to join the trainings that we've got. And usually we especially when as we're planning out the kind of integration of the engagement work within the fellowship, we are thinking about more ways that we can bring in our engagement colleagues alongside the project. Because as you probably know, that if the better, the more we can get our teams, together from the beginning of the project, the better the project will be. So yeah, that will be definitely something that they can do. Okay. Any tips on how to spot aptly ambitious and over-ambitious stories, and how best to spot stories that cannot be completed within 10 months? That is a really good question. Sierra, do you have any thoughts on when you were thinking about scoping your project? What did you think about?
Uh, I think when we start something, I mean, when we start some investigative project, you usually will have a deadline in mind. So I will kind of like plan starting from the deadline, before the deadline, what should I do? And what can I finish before a certain time frame? So I think you will notice sometimes in the middle of the investigation or pre-reporting, because when you sense something suspicious and it require more time, or it requires maybe the authorities or the enforcement to reply you. And if you know your government well or those person well, then you might know it requires more time, then you can estimate the time frame. So usually I will set the deadline way earlier than that I can do, so then I won't strain myself too much and also won't overwork that much. But things might be changes along the way. So you might need to know your plan B and C. So you don't have a perfect time frame, of course, everyone, we don't have. So you need to know once this way is not workable for you or your team, then you can get another one. So you need a backup plan. I'm not sure am I answering your question, but I hope it's helped.
I feel like that's like a perfect answer for these. I feel like when we see applications that don't have what Sierra just mentioned, when we see that people don't have a backup plan for their project, if they don't have a timeline that is feasible when you've broken down the milestones within your project, sometimes there are timelines that are really ambiguous, and when you try to dig in a little bit deeper, they can't really explain like what they're going to be doing within that time period. And also plans where they are really, really tight. Like as Sierra mentioned, like there's always going to be something that will come up that you might not have anticipated in the beginning. So having a little bit of time built into your plan to be able to deal with those and absorb the things that take a little bit longer than expected. Those are things that we would look for.
And I would add on something is like if you are not confident in yourself to complete the entire project by yourself within that time frame, maybe you should talk to your senior or editor or supervisors, because they usually will have more experience than I do. So I discuss a lot with them before I submit the application. Yeah, so if that plan is doable and workable for my supervisor, I think that will be work for everyone else.
I love that. And this is also so important because Sierra has had a really supportive editor as well. So someone who can really look over your plan and make sure that they can get behind it as well. Like when we talked about maybe making sure you have a supportive editor in newsroom, that is super, super important. Okay, let's see more questions. There's a couple that have been upvoted. Again, please upvote questions if there's ones that I haven't gotten to that you'd like us to answer. Does the project need to be investigative slash, like, for example, identify crimes or wrongdoings, or can it just explore and explain the complexity of an issue? I would say it can explore and explain the complexity of an issue. I would say as long as there is an accountability lens to it. So I would say an explainer on its own might not be as strong, but something that is able to hold some person or some entity accountable for the thing that you're reporting on would be much stronger. So I would say that that's probably what the answer would be. Let's see. Maybe,
I
oh,
saw a
Sierra?
question about the security and anonymity because
Oh,
given
yes. Do you
some
want to answer that?
severe risks, yeah. For example, my project is kind of I'm exposing an illegal network in Malaysia. I don't know who is the back actor. I'm so afraid that I'm gonna be doxing or blackmail, something like that. I think it's fully acceptable if you want to go anonymous because we were consistently discussing about should we go should we put our byline or should we just put Malaysia Kini team as the byline and we won't put the full credit list at the end of the story. So I think this is something acceptable because we need to secure ourselves. That is our priority. I mean, the journalists have to be safe.
Yeah, I would definitely second all of that. We certainly have had several projects where that has been the case. So that's something, we would want to know about it, but also we want to make sure that our journalists are safe, and that's certainly something that we've supported before. I think the second part of that question, just because we're looking at it, does a fellowship require publication in a Western and US media outlet, or is co-publishing with a major reputable investigative network in the MENA region and independent local platforms sufficient to meet the impact requirements? There's actually no requirement at all to publish in a Western or US media outlet. I would say most of our fellows don't publish in Western or US media outlets at all. I think this year we have no fellows publishing in a US media outlet. We have a few publishing in a Western media outlet. But again, like we go back to, who is your target audience? Please, find an outlet where that audience is going to be reading. And for many of you, that will not be a Western or US media outlet. I think we probably can only do one or two more because I think we're going to have to wrap up at the top of the hour. But let me just go through the ones with a couple more upvotes near the top. Can the impact piece involve teaching a skill, for example, teaching someone to get their data removed from a database? Maria, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Yeah, I think like as long as it has like a relations with the findings, and what does the findings really like the evidence that it is needed, and what makes sense is to support community to do that. I think that that should be fine. And we also like throughout the process of the fellowship, we will continue on like refining that idea based on your reporting process.
Cool. I'm just going to do this last one, which is, should we have specific human voices or communities we have spoken to already, or a solid idea of who we will reach out to sufficient? I would say you don't have to have reached out to everybody already as part of that pre-reporting process, but we do want to have a good sense of what access you would have. So if you can give some indication of like whether it's a community that like someone can do an intro to, or maybe like you have other connections in some way, we do want to know that that is a community that you are able to reach during the fellowship. So I would make that clear in your application. I think that's probably all we can get to today because we're about reaching the top of the hour. We'll look through the other questions though after we sign off. And if there are other questions that multiple people have asked, we will put that in email, and we will also upload the recording of this to our website and email that as well. So just before we go again, if you have any questions, Feel free to reach out to our main editorial email address. Applications are due July 12th. And we're really looking forward to seeing your applications. So thanks again for joining us. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.